Scar Patty. Thank you for watching another video with me. Today I'm talking about spiritual direction. What spiritual direction is, why I started going, and why you should too. First, let's talk about spiritual direction and what it is. Spiritual direction, it is not therapy. You're not going to be going through therapy. You're going to be meeting with a certified spiritual director to talk about your relationship with God, areas that you're becoming stuck or entangled with God, areas of confusion with where God's directing you and guiding you. And through the power of the Holy Spirit, you and your spiritual director will prayerfully discern what God's trying to communicate to you in your life and help you untangle some wounds that you might have that are holding you back from growing deeper into a relationship with Christ. Basically, it's just about growing closer to Christ, being guided through the Holy Spirit while having someone to help guide you. I've had 3 experiences with spiritual direction. The first experience I had with spiritual direction was when I was in college. I was meeting with a priest. I was just really didn't understand what spiritual direction was. I wanted to do it because I thought that's what a good Christian did. It really wasn't a fruitful experience. Now looking back, the priest had a lot of good wisdom for me, but I didn't want to hear it. He should have told me that I wasn't a good fit for spiritual direction, but he was too kind to. Eventually, I stopped going to spiritual direction. It was really that I was not made for it. At the time, I wasn't mature enough to really understand the purpose of it, and I was not open to the Holy Spirit working my life. I would pray to God to work in my life, but then I didn't like the answers God was giving me. I wanted God to bend to my will, not realizing that I was doing it, because I was inviting God into my life at the time, so I thought that's what you're supposed to do. But you're supposed to invite God into your life and then accept where God is leading you instead of fighting where God is leading you. And I was really fighting where God was leading me, and I wasn't as open as I should have been. My second experience was a spiritual direction was similar to that. I was going to a woman, and I was really angry with God that I was still single. It was actually maybe a year and a half before I started dating my husband. I was just really frustrated that I was still single, and I didn't understand why God was keeping me single. And I just had a lot of frustration and anger at God. And I thought by going to spiritual direction, somehow she would solve my problems for me. Or like, God, if I went to spiritual direction and did what God wanted, then I would get what I wanted. And God's not like that. We don't bargain with God. We don't gamble with God. We don't trade things with God. God's timing is perfect. And really what I needed in spiritual direction at that time was to help me discern how to be content in my own life. But me and that spiritual director weren't really a great fit. And again, I gave up spiritual direction because I again used it as a means of trying to get what I want from God by going thinking that was gonna make God happy and then God will give me what I want. So for a long time I thought spiritual direction was not for me. I didn't like it. I had a bad taste in my mouth about it. To be fair, not every spiritual director you meet with is a good fit for you and you're a good fit for them. And that's something I should have been taking into account too, prayerfully, like thinking about a spiritual director. I should have been thinking about what kind of person do I need to be meeting with that's going to help me discern God's voice in my life. This third spiritual director that I have, which has been actually life-changingly fruitful, came to me like all things that are good through the Holy Spirit. I had been feeling a longing for mentorship and motherhood. I had been feeling a longing to be connected with a mom that was further along in life with me, preferably like adult children who could give me wisdom and advice. I was at a Catholic Women's Book Club, and we were talking about spiritual direction as it pertained to the book that we have been reading, and someone was talking about like the value of spiritual direction, because sometimes there's too many things in your life, like there are things that happen in your life that you can't talk to anyone about that's connected to your life because it affects too many people and it's connected to too many people, and that's why it's good to have a third-party person to talk to. And I was thinking about an issue I was having in my life and how there was no one I could talk to about it without it affecting the person that I was speaking to. I was praying through that and I was like, maybe I do need a spiritual director. Maybe I do need someone to talk to. And during that time, I was also experiencing that longing to have a mentor in motherhood. Then, very randomly, I had a friend tell me about how her mother had been certified in spiritual direction, and she has, 5 adult children. She's a devout Catholic. She was looking for new people to start facilitating spiritual direction for. I actually had met her mother like a year and a half before at a prayer event, and I remember wanting to know her more. I just felt God calling me, inviting me to want to know her more. I know that sounds like weird, but I felt that way. So now it's like a year and a half later, she's telling me about that. So I reached out to my friend and I said, hey, if your mom is looking for people to spiritual direct, I would love to go to spiritual direction with her. I'm really considering, I just think we'd be a good fit. I didn't hear from them for like a while, and then like a month later, I had reached out again, and she said that her mom hadn't finished her certification, but when she did, she would reach back out to me. And then her mom reached out to me, and I started seeing her in February of 2024. And the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Like, it was all very Holy Spirit ordained, and everything just kind of fell into place. So I guess, like, when it comes to finding a spiritual director, I really invite you. It's so Holy Spirit led. Like, the Holy Spirit is really the spiritual director, and both me and my spiritual director are just really discerning what the Holy Spirit's trying to communicate to me in that moment. Since it's so Holy Spirit led, I really recommend you praying to the Holy Spirit for a good spiritual director and to help you discern, like, what would be a good fit for spiritual direction. Because I think you need to really discern where you're most in need of direction in life, and someone that might fit that kind of bill. And ask, for God to open the right doors. God will always open the right doors. The Holy Spirit will open the doors that need to be opened, especially because God is always desiring to pull you closer to Him. God is always desiring for you to know Him better and love Him better and hear His voice more clearly so you can follow Him better. He wants you to find a good spiritual director. What's been the most fruitful thing for me, practically how to find a spiritual director aside from praying to the Holy Spirit and asking God to open doors, is reaching out to your local church. They normally have a list of spiritual directors that are taking on people. And you can just email a bunch. You can ask the church if there's any parishioners on that list. That can always be easier because it's always better to find someone somewhat locally. It makes it easier to attend. Spiritual direction is a commitment. I only go once a month, which is the perfect amount for me. You can go less or more depending on what you and your spiritual director discern, but it is something that I highly recommend you pursue. Something that's really helped me with spiritual direction is just like hearing the voice of God more clearly in my life, realizing things that I'm holding back from the Lord. The way I developed a morning prayer offering, and that was through my spiritual director's guidance. It was very fruitful for me. I can't say enough, like, you don't realize the wounds you're carrying or the things you're not bringing to the Lord until you have somebody else to talk about where you're feeling stuck. Then once I started talking about where I'm feeling stuck spiritually and confused spiritually, the Holy Spirit really led both of us to help me realize, like, wounds that I had been holding back from the Lord, ways I had been misinterpreting the Lord and not trusting the Lord in His infinite goodness and His guidance. I hope that this video helps you find a spiritual director. I cannot recommend finding a spiritual director enough. It will bless your life so infinitely. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.